Hello, David Clarke here from DVC Training. In this second video about outpainting, stretching 4:3 shots to widescreen, I'm going to look at setting up Pinokio and WAN2GP and then some of the possible problems that I have had whilst doing this and my solutions to them. Obviously, there are links below in the description to individual sections of the video, so you can jump ahead if, for example, you know how to install Pinokio. So the first thing I'm going to look at is actually installing Pinokio and WAN2GP and some of the things I fiddle with in the configuration. Now I'm using WAN2GP inside of Pinokio just because it's easier than setting it up separately. I will do a separate video about setting it up as a standalone. But the simplest thing is to use Pinokio. So what you've got to do is you've got to install Pinokio. So first of all, type in Pinokio and it should take you to a place where you can download it. Again, I can put the link to this in the description. I'm going to download the Windows one. Doesn't take very long because it's not very big, and run it. So Pinokio is just really a front end that lets you get to lots of other AI programs. Am I going to allow it through the firewall? Yep, please. It comes up with this. Yeah, I'm just going to save the settings, select it, restart. So it complained there that you don't want to go into exFAT drives, but none of my drives are exFAT. I'll keep everything as NTFS. And now that's just simply installed Pinokio. Then you want to install WAN2GP inside of this. Now before you do, make sure that you've got lots of space on wherever you're going to put this, because it'll start downloading these AI models, and these AI models are big. They need the models to do the work. But you start downloading them and they go to a place where you don't have enough space, you won't be able to use them. So what you really need to do is to stick them on a location that you've got lots of space. Now on my C drive, I've put a 2 terabyte C drive in, I've got loads of space. But if you want it to go somewhere else, come to the settings and go to this home directory and then choose another directory. So like I've got a bit of space here on my F drive. On my F drive, I'm going to make up a folder called Pinokio. And I am going to change this to be F Pinokio. Now it does say make sure it's not an exFAT drive. It's not an exFAT drive, it's NTFS. Now, if I select that and then restart it, everything should go down to the F drive, not onto my C drive, where I've got lots and lots of space. So restart it, and now what I've got to do is find WAN2GP and install it. To do this, click on the Explore button. Now, if you can't see it here, go up there. But click on Explore, and then in the search, type in WAN2GP. Enter. And it comes up with all these different variations. I go for the top one, click on that, and then click install. Then it comes up with lots of different variations. Go install latest, and then install again. Now it's saying it needs 11 different things. So I'm just going to let it do whatever it wants. And this is the bit that will take time. You'll notice now it's now going to the F drive because I told it to stick it somewhere else. But now I'm just going to have to sit and wait while it puts all this stuff on there. But that's the advantage of Pinokio, is it's going to put all the stuff on there that it actually needs. Whereas if I was doing this manually, I'd have to individually install those. Then as you'll see, if you watch my other video, you end up putting in command prompt things to do it. You copy and paste command prompt things that somebody else has written for you, but it's still hassle. There's still a lot of clicking around until you can get it going. The advantage of running it as a standalone is it's probably a bit faster and it probably starts a bit quicker. I use both. I use Pinokio and I use the standalone. But for most people, I think Pinokio is probably the simplest because it does it all for you. And all this stuff, it's just busy going off there and doing its own thing. So I'll let it do that and then I'll come back once it's all finished. Obviously, how long it takes depends on how fast your internet is, because obviously this is all coming down from the internet. Okay, I get to this section, just click download. So it's done a whole bunch of stuff and it's still got more things to do. Do I know what it's doing? Not really. I just let it do it. You'll also notice my F drive is starting to fill up with stuff because that's where I told it to put the stuff. Although the Pinokio program is on the C drive, all the stuff, and you'll find out there's been a lot of stuff in checkpoints once it's all ready, once it's downloaded some models, all the important stuff will go here. Oh, and now the installation is completed. Yay! I'm just going to restart Pinokio. When you restart Pinokio, you're then presented with WAN2GP sitting for you there. Double click on it and you get to this interface, which I'm just going to maximize. Sometimes I see these headings down the side, sometimes I see them at the top. But what you're looking for here is the Start button. There's an Update button there, so if you ever want to, you can click on that and it'll update it. But just click Start and it will start. Now again, this will take time. There's various bits of this that will take time. Lots of times I've clicked on that Start button and I've waited for it to start and I thought it must have gone wrong. And then I've had to restart Pinokio and do it again. But I think it's just taking a bit of time to start up because it's setting up some stuff in the background that it needs to get this working. When I run WAN2GP as a standalone, it also takes a little bit of time to get stuff working. Let it do it and you'll get into the WAN2GP interface. There we are, after a couple of minutes we're in. And you can see you've got the same interface I've been fiddling with. But I don't have the thing that I really want, which is process full video. To get that, you've got to come over to plugins, and down here you've got to tick processed full video to turn it on. There's other things in here which I haven't really fiddled with. There's lots of stuff over here which put in LoRa's and all sorts of things, and I shall be looking into those a bit more. But right now I need to tick that, save it and restart. You only have to do that once. Once it's turned on, it'll be there for all the time, but you have to wait for it now to restart and you will have the process full video option. That message said it would open in a new tab. Flipping well doesn't, you know. So I tend to turn it off, go back into it, choose WAN2GP, this thing. Click start. You might notice this has now popped down this side. And here we are. I've now got process full video and I can get on and do some work. There is a bunch of configuration stuff that you can go to over here. And down here under performance, there are all these different memory profiles. So it's selected what it thinks is the best profile for your system, but you can choose another one and it gives you a hint there as to what they all do. I have tried others. To be perfectly honest, I've found leaving it on the one it chose to me best results anyway. But you might need to try that if you're having lots and lots of memory problems. Most of this I have not fiddled with at all. There's all sorts of other bits and pieces here. Again, I haven't fiddled with these at all. If I come up with anything useful with all that, I'll let you know. Now, if I was to put something in here, I actually start doing some outpainting, it will then have to download some more models. It'll have to download whatever that is, any of these. They'll all take time. So the very first time you use any of this, it will actually take time before it gets going. Again, depending on how fast your internet is, it could be half an hour, it could be an hour, whatever. You will be able to see down here at the bottom, there'll be some information coming up, or you'll see something under the Video Generator tab up here. Video Generator tab really hasn't got much to do with the processing, apart from when it's processing, it will pop up here. Video Generator tab I use for doing other AI stuff, either creating scenes completely from scratch, using text, or from images that I've made. I'll go into that in another video because there's a lot in here, and this is where you can get very, very creative. And I've used it to do things like special effects, blow stuff up. So I've taken CGI buildings that I've made and blown them up using this as opposed to using the 3D program. But again, talk about that in another video. What possible problems are there? Well, first off, like I said, you've got the fact that the outpainting isn't the right aspect ratio when it comes out. Now, using Resolve, I can just set it to stretch and it sorts it out. But if I'm using another program like Premiere or EDIUS, what I'd have to do is to go into their motion setting, you know, the layouter in EDIUS or the effects control window in Premiere, and change the aspect ratio of the original so it was the right size. Now inside of EDIUS, I've put it onto the timeline here. You notice this is the not corrected version. It's still got the black bars at the top and the bottom. So if you go into the layouter, disable preserve frame aspect and click that, it'll stretch it out so it fits. This will make the height fit, that makes the width fit. Of course, once you've got that, you can just drop it onto other clips or even save that as a preset, which you can drop onto loads of clips. What I do is I use another free program, which is called VirtualDub 2. So to get VirtualDub, just go on the interweb and download it. And what I'll do is I'll take the outpainted version, I will whack that into VirtualDub. Inside of VirtualDub, I will then go to the filters, I'll add in a resize filter, turn off the aspect ratio, make it absolute, and say make it 540. So what that's going to do now is automatically take that, stretch it to the right size, and then I'd save that out as another video. So let's make sure that the full processing on video, full processing on audio, save video, and I'd actually save this out as a ProRes file and save it, and that will make me an outpainted file, which is actually the right size again. You know, once I've set this all up, I can just save it as a processing setting and do a whole batch of files at once. Now, if people are more interested in how I did that, maybe I'll do a separate video about that. Or maybe sometime in the future, I will hopefully work out why WAN2GP actually squashes things. Now, one step I did miss out is preparing this stuff in the first place. As I mentioned, WAN2GP only does fixed resolutions, and 540p is the closest that I've got to PAL. 480p will be the closest you have to NTSC. Now, that is 720 by 540. If we go to my original footage, like this stuff here, you notice that's 720 by 576, not 720 by 540, because it's DV footage. Now, I'm going to make up a new timeline inside of Resolve, be the same in any other editing program, which I'm going to make it 720 by 540. So I'm turning off project settings, going to the time resolution and typing in 720 by 540. So I create a different timeline with a different set of settings. And if I pop that onto there, you might notice that it goes in, but it has got black bars at the top and the bottom. If I go to the inspector, set the scaling to crop, it's not scaling properly, but it's not actually fitting properly. If I was to take the footage of the countryside here, you'll notice it's got the same thing. It's got some black bars at the side and some rubbish down the bottom. I can't just take that and pop it into WAN2GP because it will naff it up. It will mess it up. So for example, here, I gave it a shot which had those black bars down the side, and it did this. It filled it with black. It's not done it correctly. So you've got to prepare it first before you pop it into WAN2GP. So I would make up a timeline that's 720 by 540 to sort it out, adjust the zoom until that stuff goes away, which is about there. With this one here, same thing. Let's just scale it up until those black bars go away. Maybe sometimes with high 8, I find there's more black bars on one side than the other, so maybe you have to move it across a bit. And if you're using these numbers here in your Resolve, if you hold down on the Shift key and then scroll backwards and forwards, you can change it in much, much smaller amounts. This particular clip came off of a DVD. It's all home stuff. It's all rubbish footage. But it came off a DVD and it was interlaced. So this one's been deinterlaced. Now I deinterlaced that using QTMGC, which is my favorite deinterlacer. And I did that because I was working inside of EDIUS, which has got a NAF deinterlacer. But thanks to the BAT server, I can use this QTMGC. Got videos about that on the channel, so look it up. This one here is the original DV AVI file. So the clip itself is actually interlaced, lower field first. So it's got to be deinterlaced. And as I'm in Resolve Studio, I can pop in here and use the DaVinci neural engine to get better deinterlacing. So that will produce a better, sharper result. My favorite is QTMGC, and I could always, of course, take it out of Resolve, deinterlace it in that, then bring it in and then chop it. But I found the Resolve neural engine ones nearly as good anyway. So I can use the neural engine to do the deinterlacing, scale it a bit, get rid of the all extraneous rubbish around the side, and then export it. Now, having done that, I would then come in here and I'd go to deliver, give it a name, decide where it's going to go, and make an MP4 file. Now, this is the other very, very important thing for WAN2GP. It only does MP4s. If I find a way around that, I'll let you know. So I have come in here, made an MP4 file. Generally, I'll use the NVIDIA encoder because I think it's better than the native one. And then I'll add that to the render queue and export it. But I've had to do that first for every clip. So you could do it for an entire timeline. The only thing I have found doing long clips is that sometimes halfway through a shot, it does something really weird. And if that happens, I have to replace that shot with one that doesn't do something really weird. Inside of EDIUS, I would set the project settings to custom, 720 by 540. Set the aspect ratio to 1:1. Probably put it at 10-bit just because why not? And then get OK. Now, if I had the interlace clip like this one, and I'm in EDIUS 11, I'd right click on it and use my bat server QTM-GC to deinterlace it. Then I'd pop it onto the timeline here. It would go in with the black bars down the side, pop into the layouter, and then stretch it so it fits and gets rid of those black bars. And then just export it from EDIUS as an MP4 file in the normal way. Now, one of the problems I have had with doing this is consistency over shots. So, for example, take something like this, which is a little conversation, you might even recognize the footage if you've seen some of my tutorials, between this guy and me. And obviously we cut from him to me, from him to me, from him to me. So what happens if I take each of those clips individually and upscale them? What will it put in there? Now this is the results. So you can see you have your wide shot. Now in the wide shot here, it's obviously finished off the table, put some gubbins behind me and so on. All that looks fine. Then you get to the first shot of him. Yeah, that looks fine. It seems to have filled this up. Yeah, okay, things aren't straight, but that wasn't actually straight in the first place. And then you get to me, which is just a plain beige wall. Again, that looks fine. Then you come to this one, and is there a slight difference between that and that? Well, yeah. You might notice there, something to do with the wall. Let's go to this shot. That wall's changed again, so I've got 3 different walls there. And now I've got something coming up on the door, and then we get to the final one, and we get something different again. You look at me, where I've just got a plain beige wall. All it's got to do is fill out the beige wall. Second time around, well, it stuck a box in there for some reason, which isn't in there. This time around, nope, I've just got a back of the chair, which I didn't have on the other ones, but that could be down to me moving slightly. And this one, what the frelling hell's gone on here? I've got all sorts of stuff. And that's what it does sometimes. It's been trained by looking at lots of different footage and saying, if it looks like this in the middle, what do you stick at the edges? And basically, it's just guessed something different every time it gets to that shot. If that's what it looked like all the way through, maybe that would be fine. But you can't have it changing every time you change the angle of the conversation. And what's come up here, this is fairly sedate. I've had some really wacky stuff come up on some shots. Sometimes it'll put another person in here. Especially if you've got a long shot with a crowd, there'll be other people that were never around suddenly put in. So yes, sometimes it gets it wrong. Most of the time it gets it right, sometimes it gets it wrong. With this guy, it doesn't actually matter which of these things it uses to fill in the edges, as long as it's consistent. I need it to be consistent. So my solution to that was, instead of getting it to do these clips one at a time, I'll take the original stuff and I'll just trim them down with some handles on. So I'll put sort of 25-second handles each side. And then I will take those and stick them on a timeline, and I'll move them around so that all of these clips just are one after the other. So I've got the 4 shots of these guys. I will export that as one movie and then put that through at once. And then I'll get consistent background all the way through. Same as this. I'll just mark out my in and out point, export that as an MP4, and then I'll have a consistent background all the way through. And yeah, if it did put that all the way through, I'd have to just run it again so I didn't have that all the way through. But whilst it is processing, it does give you a quick preview of the latest chunk. So if after the first chunk you can see that the stuff it's filling in the background is rubbish, you can stop it and start it again. It does do different things every time you process it. Now obviously the other question you might have is, okay, well, you've got that where that's one big clip and that's one big clip. I made trimmed versions of each of these, so I just used the bits that I was using with some handles on it. Of course I could have just dug up the original clip and just processed that. So, you know, I could just take that and do the entire clip. But because there are failed takes in there and things like that, it adds extra processing time for stuff that's not going to be needed. So what I like to do is just trim it down to the bits I'm using with some handles. It's basically go to the deliver page, choose your export format. Now, as I'm going to make something which I'm then going to remake into an MP4, I'd probably choose something like ProRes. And then tick this thing, individual clips. I go to the file, make sure unique file name is ticked, and I can give it a starting name. So I would tend to use the clip name. So the easiest way to do that is either click the little plus and look for clip name, or what I prefer to do is just go percentage and then start typing clip. So it's going to put some numbers at the start and then put in the clip name. Now after I've done that, I'll come back to the video tab, pop down to the advanced settings, and I will say add handles. So down here, it's got frame handles. I would add, as I'm on a 25 frames a second timeline, 25 handles to every clip. So that's going to add a second at the start and the end, just to give me a bit of wiggle room. I could just do exactly what's on the timeline, but if I do exactly what's on the timeline, I haven't got any room to tweak it later on. So I like to add handles. Then I add it to the queue and render it. Once that's done, I'll bring them back in, make up their own timeline like I did a second ago, and then just move these so they're all next to each other. And that way I get a consistent background for all of that and a consistent background for all of that. With this particular video, this footage actually started off as widescreen. I only used it because I needed something which I had all the rights to use and didn't upset anybody. And I know this picture of me and picture of this guy Ringo is something that I can do what I like with. So what I did is I made 4:3 versions of this stuff, which was originally widescreen. So I am actually in a position to compare what it decided to fill the sides in with to what was actually there in the first place. So, for example, in the wide shot, it filled in this stuff at the back, it filled in stuff down there, and this is what the original looked like. So obviously it's not the same. What it's done is something that looks acceptable, something that looks like it could be realistic, but it hasn't guessed what was there originally, because it can't. It's literally guessing based on what it's been trained. I don't know, it looks at me and it thinks we have an untidy office behind it as opposed to what I actually had. Does it actually know something about me and the state of my office, and that's why it made it untidy? I don't know. Similar to the walls here. That's actually what it looked like, but obviously it had no idea that there was a computer screen there, because none of that appeared in the original shot. With me, yeah, looking at that, it was pretty much a blank beige wall, but there was actually a corner there. That's interesting, but obviously this outpainting stuff is going to create something that it thinks might have been there. It's very, very unlikely to create exactly what's there, but it is creating something that's acceptable. That's the point of it. I have also occasionally had shots that it just doesn't do. I made sure there's no black down the sides or anything else, and it still leaves black edges. When that happens, I have to go back to the original, make a slightly different version of it, and knock it up, and it'll do it. So it's not perfect. This, again, is just a piece of home video. Went to a zoo, filmed some monkeys. Handheld, people wobbling in front of the screen, monkey goes off screen. What's that going to make of that? Again, to me, I can't tell. Like, that monkey's just walked off screen. But it's filled in all the movement of that monkey. The whole thing's handheld. I have to say, this is really quite impressive. On this shot here, you can see an example of the fact that it's chopped it up into sections. And then suddenly, what the devil was that? Flash. And then something different arises. That's just got plain brick. A little bit later on, we've suddenly got brick and a piece of wood. It's not consistent, which is because it's chunked it, got to the end of a chunk, and at the start of the new chunk, it's decided to do something completely different. Now, what you can do here, inside of WAN2GP, change this sliding window overlap. So if you put a bigger window, then hopefully it will smooth out these differences. Here's that same shot with a 9-frame overlap. Obviously, it'll take a bit longer, but here is a 9-frame overlap. From a lot of the time, this sorts out those strange jumps. Sometimes it doesn't, especially if there are large movements. If that happens, try a larger sliding window. So I hope you found the video useful. I think this technology is amazing. I can see me using it on lots of old stuff that I'm trying to make suitable to be watched on new TVs. I can see it causing me hassles here and there. It's not utterly straightforward, click and everything's magic and it's done. But what it does do is pretty magic. Also, it will improve. The whole point of this AI stuff is it learns. The more it does, the cleverer it gets. Somebody's trained the model to do this. There'll be more of it. There'll also be people starting to include this in paid-for programs. So I'm using all free stuff. The only thing that is costing me is the bits for the computer and the electricity to do it. Somebody will stick this into paid programs. I look at a lot of paid programs using AI, doing colorization and upscaling, and I'm now looking more and more at these results I'm getting when I try some of these and thinking, hang on, isn't that just Flash? Or that colorization, isn't that colorization the same as this free colorization I've got somewhere else? And they just put a couple of buttons. So they actually used the same models and just put a fancier front end on it. Say something maybe that's slightly easier to get to grips with than Pinokio and doesn't do slightly silly things like Pinokio will do sometimes. You know, it's a free program. It's not perfect. So somebody will probably write a nicer front end on it. Somebody will probably do something to help deal with these slight glitches that we sometimes get like this thing magically appearing and do a better job of that. It's something you get like if you're using Topaz. Topaz have put a lot of work into training it. They've also put a lot of work into trying to make it what they call temporally consistent. In other words, it looks the same as the video plays back. It doesn't suddenly just jump to something else or have some peculiar look in it, which I do get sometimes, like with Flash VR. I get little jerks or little disturbances in the picture which I wish weren't there. Topaz put a lot of effort into making things temporally consistent and playing around a lot in the background. So you will find this in paid for programs sooner or later. But honestly, for free, I think it's amazing. And I've only been using it to make 4:3 into widescreen, but of course you can do the opposite. You can make widescreen into 4:3. If I took that widescreen picture, popped it into Pinokio and said, make it 4:3, it'll add something at the top and the bottom. So let's take those monkeys. Let's make it back into 4:3. And now you can see the results. It's added stuff at the top and the bottom. Now, maybe the stuff it's added doesn't make any sense. Maybe it works. But again, you can do that to repurpose footage from your widescreen to be watched on a phone. You could even make it vertical so people can watch it vertically on a phone. It's inventing stuff. Do I want to do this for all my home footage? Probably not, because it would take too long, and probably not because my home footage is document of what actually happened. I might want to make it look sharper and nicer, but maybe I don't want to start adding stuff in. Just like on these shots of me on the computer, look at these fancy speakers I had obviously bought. Yeah, didn't have those. Didn't have those speakers at all. There was a black box there, there's nothing there at all. It's just decided to put some speakers in. And the next time it did that, it did something else, like changing the chair. I'm certainly using this on my drama stuff. I know I was doing a job for somebody where he wanted to take some old training videos that he'd made and make them useful for people these days. They needed to be upscaled and widescreen. This is another tool in the arsenal to be able to widescreen stuff so you don't have to chop bits off. And compared to what I was doing before, the results are absolutely amazing to me. Anyway, hope you found the video useful. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, all that sort of thing. I'll be looking at some of the other stuff in WAN2GP, particularly to do with the AI creation stuff, which I found, again, incredibly useful for some of the drama things I've been doing. Don't forget to visit my website, www.dvctraining.co.uk, and I'll see you next time.